help with me.
Sure. Anybody have any needs that I can speak up right now? You must have one.
Well, I know we have a lot of people that are under the weather, so to speak, and aren't with us here this morning.
Craig.
Craig, right? Barbara.
Rita and friends at the funeral after the service. Well, I'm new at this, so go ahead. By all means, start us off.
Well, she's
Anybody who wants to start? Okay. Anybody else?
My dad has had some severe back pain the last month or so, and he found out this week that he's probably going to have some back surgery again. And so just, I appreciate prayer for him just for the pain until he can get into a neurosurgeon and they can, figure out what they're going to do with his back. But he just, no pain pills or anything are helping him, and he's really discouraged. So good thing is he's in church this morning, discouraged, but I appreciate prayer for that.
That's the start, right? So that he can be in the church. Anybody else? Okay.
My neighbor Gloria is down in Moffett in Tampa undergoing lots and lots of chemo, heavy doses of chemo for bone cancer, and is going to do a stem cell thing for her cancer. And we found out Thursday that they're going to have to do the procedure twice instead of once. And she's having a very, very rough time. But she's a stand-fast Christian lady, and she knows it's in the hands of the Lord, and we'll get through this. But she has appreciated the prayers in the past, and I really would like to pray today in prayer. Gloria.
I'd be down for prayer for my neighbor. I'm taking money for another tax scan and bonus and conference. And my in-law and her neighbor. This father, as he says, is partial preacher. And so really never.
And soften. Make them love you. Help them to be thankful for everything you've done for them. There's so many needs that we all have, Lord. It's just amazing how you take care of us and how you can try to keep track of everything. It's just totally amazing. It astounds me every day. As a matter of fact, Lord, there isn't nothing that isn't a miracle that I can think of. Lord, everything is a miracle. Lord, everything you do, everything that happens in this world is just one miracle after another. Holding before our eyes. Help us to see that, Lord. Open our eyes to see your miracles. And then maybe we'll try to live the way that you want us to live, Lord. And we'll put forth a better effort. We really can see what you're doing. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
That's something the Lord was laid on me as a word of encouragement to the body. I think of the story of Rita's friend, tragic death, and the despair. Some families that we know, Larry and Kathy. But I was thinking, we can go down to the hospital to the maternity ward and there's this baby that's born right now. It's like the Lord's working like. And there's people coming out of operating rooms that have been miracles have happened and with all those things. And so, with the sun is shining, you open the doors, the birds are singing. So, just don't stay in our circumstance.
Amen.
The Lord is creating life and
Hallelujah.
He is absolutely sovereign and in control.
That's right. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
It'd be hard to be God. dream job. Thank God all I have to be is a lowly little servant. I want to show you something that the Lord has blessed me with. It's a gift, I guess you could say. And it's more than a gift. It's actually my life story. But it's just more than my life story. It's everybody's life story. And more than that, it's the story of God and earth. You know, what He's doing. And it's in the form of that. So you can see better. Great for our audio and video.
Absolutely.
Okay, now everybody can see that pretty good. Is there any way to focus it any better?
No, that is focused.
That's it.
Yeah, you have to, if you want to see it
So
better,
everybody can see it.
turn the lights off.
Okay, what I wanted to show you is that, like, I didn't know about any of this when I first started on my hobby. This kind of evolved. I'm just going to make a quick picture of it here. You notice there's 2 chairs, 2 footstools, and a table. And I've been thinking about this over the weekend. I hadn't even noticed this before, you know, but there's a chair for God. He's the rocking chair. He's the oldest, right? And his son has a regular chair, and that's on his right hand, of course, right? And then the Spirit sits in the midst of him, and it's the light of the world. There's no little lamp there. And the 2 little footstools, you know, heaven is my throne, God says, and the earth is my footstool. So they both have a feet on the earth, you know, that's kind of heavy. And that's amazing, you know. And God just showed me that recently, since this, you know, I knew this was coming up. But anyhow, everybody that looks at me knows that there's some more to the story than just what you see here. You know, so I want to tell you the rest of the story. You know, where to start? But you know, I was thinking about, you know, the Bible is a story. It's a love story, and this is a love story. You know, and I'm a love story. I'm a story of God loving me, and it's written for all to see. And everybody can see the story of me just looking at it. And, you know, unlike the Bible, I have 2 parts. I have the Old Testament and the New Testament. Before Jesus and after Jesus. And, you know, the before part is a big, long story with lots of bad places in it. It's like, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then Jesus comes along, and then the whole scene of the Bible changes, and that's what happened with my life. And then the Bible ends with the Revelations with us reigning and ruling and the new heaven and new earth, the Lord. And that's the way my life is going to end too. And I can be thankful for that. You know, but personally, my story begins, you know, 54 years ago. And I know we haven't got time to put out all the details, so I have to shorten it. And I hope it doesn't go over time, but if it does, it's the Lord's will. And I didn't even find out about my early history until I was 40 years old. You know, I didn't know exactly anything about what the true story of my life was until my stepmother finally admitted she was my stepmother, and she told me, because she knew she was dying, so she told me the whole story about where I come from. And as it turned out, you know, I was born illegitimately and by accident, you know, and there's no accidents I know to the Lord, but to everybody else there is. And I wasn't really meant to be here, and if, you know, if abortion was legal at that time or available, I probably wouldn't be here. So thank God that there wasn't no abortion at that time. And it just so happens that, you know, I can see when I look back on my life, I can see how God's plan for my life included, you know, this happening to me. My beginning being rough as it was. And anyhow, I was an unwanted child. But the Bible says that, you know, when the mother and father forsake me, and the Lord will take me up. And that's exactly what happened. My real mother, her husband was in Korea, fighting the Korean War, and she got lonely, and she made a big mistake, and voila, I was conceived. And it just so happened, her next door neighbor, she lived on an army base, and her next door neighbor was my stepmother and stepfather neighbors. And it just so happened my stepfather was getting ready to get shipped overseas to the war. And he'd already been in World War II, and he didn't want to go to another war, and I really don't blame him. And so he had a dilemma because my stepmother couldn't have any children. And that was the only way he could get out of going was to have a child at that time. And it just so happened when I came along and was conceived, it was just a perfect answer for their dilemma. And it just so happens that my stepmother and my real mother were good friends. And so they got to talking, and my dad, he was in the military, of course, and he worked at an Army hospital as a supply sergeant. And he arranged it so that my real mom could be put in the hospital under my stepmother's name, so that when I was born, I would have the papers and everything, that I would be theirs. And that's exactly what happened. So by sparing my life, I also, that my stepfather's life was possibly spared as well. So that's how, I was brought into the world. Now, it just so happened that both of my stepparents grew up during the Depression, and they grew up with large families, and they were the older siblings, so they had to take care of their younger brothers and sisters. By the time they grew up, they didn't want to have anything to do with children anymore. They didn't want any children. However, because of the war and the situation, they were, compelled to adopt me. But after I'd served my purpose, they were stuck with me. After my dad got his deferment, and, so they were stuck with me. They had to raise me. And like I said, I was really not wanted from them either. So my stepfather and stepmother from now on, I call my mother and father, they were both alcoholics. My dad worked all the time. He's always gone on duty somewhere doing something. And my mother was always drinking and, hanging out, carrying on. And they fought like cats and dogs. They were both mean and mean-tempered, quick-tempered, mean-spirited, and they would fight and argue all the time. And if they were in a bad mood and neither one of them were around, they'd take it out on me. So, I got butt into all the trouble going on, and I was the subject of all the frustrations. So that didn't make for a happy childhood for me, and I was being an only child, so I didn't really have anybody else to go to for comfort. And because I wasn't the kind of child my mother would have wanted to have, so she never really, bonded with me. I didn't have the affection that most mothers have with their, the affectionate relationship most mothers have with their babies, like so many of you have. And so I was always very lonely. I can remember that. And plus, I was always beaten physically, worked like a slave. And because I inherited a tendency from my step-parents and my real parents to be overweight, because they both were, I had a problem with that. And so going to school and everything, I was always the subject of abuse from other kids. And between, my mother and father fighting all the time, and my mother always making me feel bad about myself by putting me down and everything, I was a mess, and I got through to high school, and the same behavior happened again and again. I was put down, abused, physically, mentally, verbally, whatever kind of way you can be abused, except sexually. Thank God that didn't happen. But anyhow, probably all of you had something like that happen to you to some extent. But to me, it was, I felt like I was the only one in the world in that situation. I felt like I was living in hell. And so I was so desperate for affection and acceptance, that I was willing to try anything. So of course I got in with the wrong crowd in high school, and started stealing for them. I'd steal stuff from my dad's store. After he got out of Army, he managed a store. I'd steal stuff for the store to buy friendships. I'd steal cigarettes and beer and stuff and buy myself friends. And even though I had all these people around me, they still put me down. I never really, they had me there because I was providing for them all the goodies, but they still never accepted me. So that was kind of tough on me. And of course, that just led to a downward spiral for me. And I got into drinking and going to school drunk and skipping class and ditching school, smoking on campus and so on and so forth. Before you know it, I was suspended, and then I started getting into other things and got to the trouble to the point where the juvenile authorities got involved, the police department, and they busted me and they said, well, look, they said to my parents, they said, either he's going to go in the military or he's going to go to reform school, which shall it be? And I just, I was 17 years old. I was, a senior in high school, and it didn't look like I had any way out. And I thought, well, maybe this is it. Maybe, I'll grow up and go in the military, I'll become a real man, and, finish my education, and so on and so forth. So I signed the papers, my parents signed the papers, and I was excited about going to the Army. And the first 10 minutes after I got to the Army, I realized, what a big mistake I had just made. And there was no way out of it. There was no way out, and being how I was still 17, and I was back there in the Vietnam War, and most of the guys in my outfit were drafted. And most of them had been drafted away for jobs and, lost everything. A lot of them lost their wives and children because they couldn't keep the payments, couldn't support them on Army pay. And so there was a lot of bad attitudes there. And I just happened to be the youngest, most naive, ridiculous, biggest, heaviest kid in the whole outfit of 250 guys. And I was the drill sergeant's pet, of course, because I was the one that had to make the example of, that they were going to make a man out of me no matter what, And of course, all the other guys, they just followed suit because I couldn't do one push-up when I went in the Army, couldn't do one chin-up, I couldn't run more than 3 blocks, without, and I was just a mess, And so they committed me to like 12 hours a day of PT, physical exercise, and I tell you, and this went on, the whole time I was in basic training, verbal abuse, how the drill sergeant just tears you apart. And I got to the point I tried to commit suicide. I was just like at the point, like I was so sore when I woke up in the morning I couldn't move, And so I was at the point where I said, anything's better than this. Let me take some aspirin. And I took a whole jar of aspirin. They, pumped my stomach, and then they lightened up on me a little bit. But I still got to the end of basic training. I still couldn't pass the physical part of basic training. So that meant I had to go to the fat farm, until I could pass. And so that meant, double torture on top of what I already had suffered, And so I finally made it through after a couple months more of that. And I went to my regular training, went to stateside station. I thought I got out of the war. I got stationed in Kansas in the middle of wintertime. And I was from Arizona when I went in the Army. And they put me outside pulling guard duty in the middle of the night in the wintertime in Kansas, and that's like 40 below with 40-mile-an-hour winds, And I was so cold that I just volunteered to go to Vietnam to get out of the cold. And there goes, from one frying pan into fire. And I get to Vietnam, and I'm thinking, well, maybe now I'll be a hero, and I'll be, everybody look up to me and respect me, I get there, I'm in base camp, I still have a bad attitude. I'm a shirk on my duty and everything. And the sergeant's always on my case, and the corporal's always on my case. And then they catch me napping one time. The corporal catches me napping, and he throws a smoke grenade in my bunker, right? And I was so sound asleep, I didn't wake up until I was almost suffocated. I come crawling out of there. It took me like 20 minutes to recover from it. And that made me mad. I ran and grabbed my gun. I was going to shoot the corporal. And the captain jumped in front of me and he said, son, you don't want to do this. You're going to ruin your life forever. You know, and it shocked me, you know, because he was willing to put, you know, his life down for the corporals, you know, and I was, you know, stunned. So he talked some sense in me. They stuck me on a helicopter and got me way out of there. And I never did go back to the front after that because, you know, they wouldn't let me have a gun after I loaded one anyway. And back in base camp, and then, you know, I had a lot of time on my hands. I was doing toilets and stuff like that, you know, cleaning the yard, raking the yard. So that was my life, you know. And so I had a lot of free time on my hands. So that and I got involved, you know, so I felt sorry for me. He said, you're always depressed, you know. He said, here, this'll, you know, he said, this'll cheer you up. And he turned me on to pot for the first time, you know. And boom, you know, that was like, whoa, you know. I had something to live for then, you know, because, you know, pot really does feel good, you know. I mean, even though it leads you to other things, you know, it did keep me from committing suicide, because at that time I was just like, I want out of here, you know, I want out of this place, I want out of this world, you know, stop the world let me on. And so I got back from Vietnam, I made it alive somehow, and I got back and I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to be here, I'll get back to my neighborhood, you know, and thinking, well, everybody's going to welcome me, and, you know, by then the Vietnam War was very unpopular, you know, and like everybody hated Vietnam veterans. I mean, there was no ticker tape parades, nothing like that. So you know, that kind of depressed me. And then, you know, being drugs, there was new drugs I hadn't tried in Vietnam, so I just said, what the heck, you know, so I started doing drugs. I tried going back to work, but I couldn't handle it because all I wanted to do was party. You know, I went to college for a while in the VA, couldn't handle that because it was not enough time for partying. You know, you can't just study very good when you're stoned, you know. And so I went on another drug binge for a while, and I really hit the bottom then. I started doing hard drugs and needles and the whole bit. And then I said, no, this isn't it. So I thought, well, I'll try school one more time. So I went to a trade school this time instead of regular college. And I put forth my best effort, and I graduated second from the top of my class in computer training. And I thought, this is it, you know, I'm going to make it now legitimately. And they were supposed to guarantee you a job when you graduate. And I thought, well, you know, second and the top, I'll get a job like that. You know, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, a month goes by, 2 months go by, 6 months go by, a year goes by. Still, you know, no job. I'm putting in applications, driving all over the place, you know, doing little odd jobs to keep alive. And boom, then I find out that the school was set up just to build veterans out of their benefits, and they really didn't have the contacts to set you up in a job. So that was it. You know, I said, what's the use, you know? What's this world all about? You know, I give my life, you know, risk my life, and, you know, I do my best to go to school and do something with me, and then just nothing ever works for me. I'm a failure, you know. I said, I give up. And so then I said, well, I'm going to go back to drugs. And so I did. And I started dealing drugs, heavy drugs, you know. And I mean, if I had got caught, I'd have been up to prison for life, you know, because heroin was life back then. I guess it still is. But anyhow, it just so happened my dad was friends with a lot of policemen who came in to his store. And he got to work with one of his police buddies. The narcs people were trying to bust me. And my dad told me about that, you know, and that scared me. Boy, that just shocked me because I knew, you know, what the penalty was. And I knew I had to get away because I was too involved. I knew I couldn't do it unless I left town. So my dad had a sister in L.A., in Hollywood. And so he sent me off to her, and she helped me get started. And I got a job pumping gas, and I moved in a hotel across the street. And I was scrambling by, but I got off the drugs. I went cold turkey, got off the drugs. Got sicker than a dog, but I did get off the drugs. But my life was pretty minimal. You know, I just didn't have much going on. My life was consistent work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, you know, pumping gas. And I didn't have enough money to do anything with when I was done, you know, with my paycheck, you know, except pay bills. And so for entertainment, I used to walk up and down Sunset Strip and Hollywood Boulevard on Friday and Saturday nights. That was my life, work, and walk up and down Sunset Strip. It was terribly lonely. I didn't know anybody but my aunt and uncle, and they were worlds apart from me. They weren't real friends or anything. And I knew absolutely nobody, and the people at work didn't really like me, and I really wasn't much to offer to anybody, really, to be friends with anybody. And so, one particular night I was walking up and down Sunset Strip on Hollywood Boulevard, and I was contemplating life and thinking about what is life all about. It just doesn't make any sense. I try my best, and it seems like the whole world's against me. Everything's against me. No matter what I do, I fail. Nobody ever likes me. I can never please anybody. I never can do anything right. I'm just a total mess up. And then, I hear the devil talking to me. He said, "Yeah, it's a dog-eat-dog world." And I'm thinking, that's right. It is a dog-eat-dog world. He said, the only way you can get ahead is be a bad dog yourself. And I'm thinking, having this conversation, I didn't know it was the devil. But I said, that's right. And I said, well, from now on, I'm going to watch out for number one, and I'm going to get ahead. I'm going to step on everybody. I'm through being Mr. Nice Guy. No more Mr. Nice Guy. So I'm thinking about, well, what am I going to do now? And I said, well, I can't make it legitimately, so it only leaves a life of crime. And I didn't have the patience to go through school and all that. So I said, well, I'm too big to be a cat burglar. I don't have the money to buy a gun or knife. So I only need mugging. Because I'm a big guy, I can do that. It doesn't take much to be a mugger, right? So I'm walking up and down the street, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to mug somebody, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm not quite mean or bad enough to do that, So I thought, well, what am I going to do, So then I started thinking about all the horrible, hateful things that people had said to me, and what my parents had said, and all things that it started making me work myself up into a fever, and I'm working myself up, feeling more and more mean and ugly and powerful, and everybody walked by, I just glare at them, just hateful and great, and they, and the better I got, the more I did it, the better I got at it, pretty soon everybody was shocked when I looked at them, and I'm thinking, I'm ready now, and I'm starting to look for my first victim. I walk up to this corner, and I look across the street, and there on the opposite corner, there's this attractive hippie couple, young hippie couple about my age, dressed in the fringe jackets and beads and then long hair and all that, and they're looking straight at me. And I'm thinking, what are you looking at, but they were just smiling, they were beaming, and I thought, man, those guys are stoned or something, I never seen that, and they were looking right at me, and I thought, well, I'll just wipe that stare right off, and that smile right off your face, so and they just laughed like you all did, and I thought, whoa, everybody else is turned away, what's happening? And I said, they got to be stoned. And I said, well, if they're that friendly, maybe they'll share it, So I walked across the street, right? I walked right up and they're, hey, how are you? And I think, oh, I don't know quite what to think, but they were awful friendly. And so they introduced themselves, told me their names, and I said, hey, and I said, right out, I said, I got to know what you guys high on. And they laughed, and they said, oh, the Most High. And I said, what? What's that? The Most High. Back then, they were coming out with different things, LSD or acid every week, so I thought this was some kind of new acid or something that they had, drugs. And they said, oh, it's the best high you ever heard of. And I said, oh, yeah? And yeah, you've never seen anything like this. And I said, okay, I'm ready. Turn me on. And they said, oh, sure, come on. And so we walked off down the street, and we're chit-chatting, and I'm thinking we'll go down behind the building somewhere and get stoned, So we go down and turn the corner, and on the side of the street, there's this big old hippie bus painted up real pretty. And it's a portable coffee shop, It's like back in those days, coffee shops were the rage, and they stopped, and they asked me, they said, are you hungry? And I said, well, yeah, I'm always hungry. And they said, well, come on in, we'll get something to eat. And I said, well, hey, wait a minute, I ain't got any money. And they said, that's all right, we'll buy it. And I said, well, wait a minute, I thought we were going to get stoned. They said, later, come on, let's get something to eat. So I walk inside and go inside this bus, and it's really beautifully decorated on the inside. It's got shag carpets all over the inside, curtains, wooden spool tables, and beads everywhere, And there are people playing music in there, I'm sitting down on the floor, and they're bringing me sandwiches, and I'm just happy as can be. So keep bringing them. and I'm thinking, what are these people up to? And well, I don't know if we're going to run over time here, but this is a good story. And I'm thinking, what are these people up to? And I said, why do they even care about this guy? Because look, at that time, I had long hair, I was greasy looking, I was a biker reject. I mean, even the bikers wouldn't have nothing to do. That's pretty bad. All those people turned the other way. The homeless people didn't even want And I'm sitting there, I'm smelling myself and thinking, do they smell me? I said, why do they like me? They must smell me. How come they can still, and I could see in their eyes that they genuinely cared about me. And boy, that was just, unbelievable to me, because I couldn't understand why they liked me. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? What do they really want? What are they after? I'm thinking, what's the catch? And pretty soon they get around to Jesus, and they start talking to me about Jesus. I said, uh-oh, that's it. I knew it, I knew there was a catch. So I thought, well, I'll just sit here and finish this sandwich, and I'll quietly excuse myself, and I'll leave. And so that's what I do, and as I start to leave, they say, oh, wait a minute, we want to show you some pictures. And they said, by the way, we're from a Christian rehab center in downtown L.A., and we do this every Friday and Saturday night. We come down here and we talk to people about Jesus. And they said, we want to show you some pictures. So they took me over to one side of the bus, and there's all these photographs of them. And on this one wall, there was pictures of people singing and dancing and playing guitars. And they were doing it at the beach and at the mountains and at the park and at this building. And they said, how would you like to do this? And I said, well, that sure would be fun. I got to go. And they said, well, we want you to come and visit. And I said, okay, give me your address. I'll come and visit. And I had no intention of coming and visiting. I just wanted out of there. But these people were so nice, I just couldn't, for some reason, I just couldn't leave. And they said, well, no, we don't want you to come and visit someday. We want you to come and visit tonight. And I said, tonight? I said, you got to be kidding. And they said, no, we want you to come tonight. And I said, well, that's 20 miles from here. I said, I ain't got no way to get back. And they said, I already told them I didn't work the next day, so they knew I didn't have to work the next day. I couldn't use that excuse. And they said, well, we'll bring you back. And then I said, then I didn't have no excuse, And they offered me free food, and that did it, And they said, we'll feed you. And I said, okay, let's go. Because I didn't have any plans for breakfast the next morning or any means for it either. Hit the dumpster or something. And so off I went with them that night. We came back to this rehab center. It was a big 6-story hotel. And it was an old hotel that was converted into a rehab center. And they took me in. I met some of the higher-ups, and we just got to talk a little bit. And they said, well, it's late. It's too late to take a tour. Why don't you spend the night? We'll give you a bed and place to clean up and so on and so forth. And they did. And next morning, they come and got me. And they took me downstairs, first of all, to have breakfast. And downstairs on the bottom floor, there was this great big dining room about the size of this. And there was about, 70, 800 people. I don't know, just a bunch of people. And they were all busy eating and chatting. And the young couple brings me in, and they stop everybody right there at the door. They stop everybody, and they say, hey, everybody. And then everybody stops eating and looks straight at me. I'm going, I was like, oh, well, what are they going to do? And I noticed that all of these eyes looking at me were just like those people's eyes the night before. And they were looking right straight at me. And then they said, I can remember it like it was yesterday. Then they said, hey, everybody, this is Bernie. He's come to visit. Make him feel welcome. Show him how much you appreciate him. Make him feel welcome. And all of a sudden, the place just exploded. And I've never had anybody show me that kind of affection in my whole entire life. You know, this was like coming back from Vietnam the right way, you know? And like, you know, it was like thundering applause, you know, and like I'm like shocked, you know, I'm standing there, you know, shaking, and I don't know what to do. And I feel this big lump in my chest, in my throat, and I'm thinking I'm going to blow up any minute, you know. And they said, well, come on, let's eat. And I can't move, you know. They have to drag me over and set me down, and, you know, and I'm sitting there, you know, eating, and people are, you know, talking to me. And I'm just like something out of a dream, you know, and it was, you know, it was just like that, you know, it was just like unbelievable. It was like beyond reality. And, you know, everybody started getting done eating and leaving. As they were leaving, they all stopped by and patted me on the back, and the girls gave me a hug and all that. And it was just so much, and this lump kept getting bigger and bigger in my throat. And all of a sudden, I just felt something give inside of me, you know. And the tears started coming out, you know, I couldn't help it. And everybody around me noticed it, the people who were around me noticed it, you know, they saw, just like that, they saw me get born again. You know, but right then, you know, I knew Jesus was there, you know, I knew him because of him, you know. And all of a sudden, I just felt all that ugliness and that hatred and all that misery and all that stuff, it just kind of like dissolved, you know. It was just like it melted away, you know, and I felt this big weight lifted off my shoulders, you know, and then they all saw it, you know, and they thought, you just got born again, you know. They said, now you got to stay. And I thought, well, yeah, well, you ain't going to drag me out of here. I'll tell you that. They didn't know it, but they wouldn't have been able to drag me out of there. But anyhow, this is going to take too long. But anyhow, I wound up staying with a year with him, and they taught me all about the Bible and how to live and how to deal with my problems. They taught me about Jesus, of course, and they gave me a foundation so that when I left there, I could survive. You know, not to say that I didn't have difficulties after I left, because you know, a lot of times, you know, well, this is my case, this is harder. You know, after I left, you know, when you're facing trials and tribulations that the Lord puts you through, you know, to learn, you know, He has to break you and reshape you, every day. Every day He has to do it over and over and over again. Well, anyhow, make a long story short, which is almost impossible. It was a few years later after I became a Christian, I met Beth, and I was staying with my mother's in a cottage in the back of her house, and I was over her house one day, and I looked on her knick-knack shelf. Well, I'm trying to shorten this, but I guess I shouldn't. One of the happy times in my life when I was growing up, when I was 14, I had this friend of mine who was a big, heavy kid like me, but he was even bigger than me, and we became fast friends because, you know, we both were in the same position. And his father was a scoutmaster at a Mormon church, and they invited me to join the troop. And come summer, it was time for to go on their yearly camping trip. And being Mormon, they went to, you know, we went to Phoenix. They wanted to go to Salt Lake City to visit the Mormon Tabernacle, of course. You know, and on the way up, we got to camp all the way up at all the national parks and all the way back. So it was like heaven to me. I'd never been camping. My father never took me anyplace like that. And so this was like my first experience of something like that. Plus, it was my first exposure to God, even though it was through the Mormons. You know, they were kind of kind to me, even though I knew that they were just trying to convert me, you know, because that was their main goal, was to convert me and make me a Mormon. But anyhow, on the first stop on the way up, we stopped at the Grand Canyon. And we were camped out in the canyon, and a couple of spots down from our site, there was an old man who made chairs similar to this, only he made them out of steel cans. And this is a picture, it's kind of hard to see it, but this is about basically what it looked like, only it was made from a steel can. This is what it looked like when I first started making them too. Okay. He was selling the paper at campsite, and I tried to, get the money together to buy me my $5 for that. Back then, a lot of money to a kid like me. And I couldn't get it together to buy one. I wanted one so bad to give my mom, but I knew it would please her. Nothing ever did please her. Okay? So I forgot all about it, and never saw the old man again. And later on, like I was telling you about, when I was living in a cottage back in my parents' house, I went over one day to my mom's house, and I was looking on her knickknack shelf, and lo and behold, there was one of them on the knickknack shelf. And I said, wow, But I know she'd never been out of speed because I was on the Grand Canyon. And I said, where did you get this? And she said, well, my father and I were at the bar, and this old man came in, sat down next to us, got to talking, and we became friends, found out he's from the same part of West Virginia, and so on and so forth. And he got ready to leave. He said, just a minute. He went out to his car, brought one back, and showed it to him. And they fell in love with it and tried to buy it. And he said, no, here. And he gave it to my mother. And, seeing I was a Christian, I took it as a sign that God had heard my prayer, my wish, back when I was a teenager, and he had answered that wish. And he had actually got her one. And I said, I wanted to be sure, so I said to her, when I was back at the camping at the Grand Canyon, I saw an old man. She said, well, it's funny. He said, he told me that he's been going there every year for 25 years. So I knew, and I thought, wow, this is a sign from God, that I should make them. So I tried to make one out of a steel can. I brought my dad's tin snips and tried to make one. It's very difficult, The steel is very hard to cut. They big old tin snips, and I tried. It took me 2 evenings just to get the can caught up and the start on it. By then, my hands were so sore and sliced up, I couldn't finish the can. I couldn't finish the chair. So I gave up on it. I thought, no, it must not be God wanting me to make this after all. So I gave up on it and put it aside. And the funny thing is, a couple of months later, they came out with aluminum cans for the first time, Shasta cans. And the older folks, like me, you remember those days. And they did come out with aluminum cans about 25 years ago, I guess, I think. And boy, the old light bulb goes off. I thought, maybe it is God telling me to do this, So I went and I found out all I needed was regular scissors to cut the can up, right? And so I did, and then I was off to races, and I hurried up, and I thought, well, this is my new career. I can work at home and make a fortune, So immediately I took and made 100 of them, all different colors. They come in shots of cans. It took me about 3 weeks. But they come all different colors, red, blue, purple, green, all the bright colors. And I made little matching cushions for them all. And I said, I got them all together and took them to the flea market thinking, I'm going to make a fortune. And I got the flea market set up my table. Everybody come in. The flea market started coming in. And I had me a big crowd out front in no time. Everybody looking at them, oohing and awing, and said, oh, they're beautiful. They were beautiful. And I thought, oh, this is it. I'm making money. After a half hour, I still hadn't sold one. And I was thinking, wait a minute now. People coming by, looking at them, and nobody would buy one. So I started getting nervous. So I thought, well, maybe I better ask what's going on here. So I started asking people, why aren't you buying these? And they said, well, it's just a can, and what am I going to do with it? And then they'll look at it, and I thought, wow, what a bummer, And so I sat there till noon and did not sell one, And I thought, oh man, my hopes, which were so high, started coming down. And then I thought, well, maybe I'm just asking too much. So I lowered the price to $3. So I think, well, surely I'm going to sell some of them. Not a one. Not a one. Now, this is in 74, something like that, about 74, 75 range, something like that. And man, I I was devastated. You know, I mean, I had just spent, 3 weeks of all this labor and didn't sell A1, not A1. And I thought, God, what did you do to me? You know, I blamed him, of course. You know, like we usually do when something doesn't work out the way we want it to. And, or try to anyway, blame him. And I thought, that's it. I'm never going to make another chair as long as I live. You know, that's it for me. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with these 100 chairs? So it was coming up at Christmas time, so I thought, well, at least I'm going to do something good with them. You know, so Beth was teaching at school at that time. She had about 25 students, so I sent them all one home for Christmas. And everybody that worked at the school, everybody I knew, all the relatives I had, and just about everybody else I could find to give one to, I gave one to. You know, and I washed my hands of it, that's it. Never going to do it again. And then a few years later, I started driving a cab, which seems to be what my chosen profession is. And I had a lot of time on my hands, and I got tired of doing crossword puzzles and stuff and reading. So I wanted something constructive to do, you know. So I decided to take up the art again because Christmas was coming up and I needed to make some presents that would save me some money. So I started making them again. I thought, well, this time I'm not going to make them for money. This time I'm going to make them to perfect the art. You know, I'm going to do my best to perfect it. You know, and I made a promise to God then that every time I make one, I would try to find a way to improve it, and I'd ask Him to help me do it. And as you can see, there's a big difference between this one, and that one, or this one. You know, any of them. And I didn't set out to come up with this design. Like I said, it's kind of evolved. Like each time making one, looking for a way to improve it. One of the things, when I cut the can up, as I got better at cutting the can up, I came up with more and more strips. So that meant I had to deviate from the original design here. And I had to, you know, I'm not a genius or anything, so I had to, I asked God to show me. So He started showing me what to do with the extra strips and how to make, you know, more detail in it. And so it's evolved in the 25 years of making hundreds of them to this, right? Still, there's no intent or purpose in my mind about the design, right? So I've been making them for years, and just recently, I guess it was back when I was 46, well, actually, I started getting insights about them. As I was making them, I started getting insights about the little chair. And I thought, well, you know, maybe there is a meaning to this, my hobby, that's deeper than just the hobby. And first thing God showed me in my heart about my little chair is, like, I was like an empty can, thrown on the side of life's highway and forgotten by society and everybody else, even my parents, you know, everybody abandoned me. And those people came along and saw me laying on the side of the road, an empty, dirty, crumbled up old piece of garbage, you know, empty of all my hopes and dreams, you know, crumbled up, dirty, filthy, full of junk, and forgotten. And they saw something in me that I didn't even know was in me, and brought me home with them, and cleaned me up, and changed me into something, you know, that's not recognizable as a piece of garbage anymore. So that's my number one thing. And then God showed me another thing about my little chairs. You know, like a chair is a lot like a human. As a matter of fact, chair parts are named after human parts. You have your back, you have your legs and arms and seat, and even a head, you know, or a headrest, they call them on chairs, right? And so God was showing me that He made me into a new man from a piece of garbage. He made a new creature, a new man. See? But that's not all either. You know, then He started showing me things about the process when he makes the can, how that was like the process when he remade me. I hope you guys don't mind me taking over time. But like, when I was an empty can on the side of the road, did I say? I had a little opening, a narrow mind, just like an empty can. And when I first picked a can, I had to clean it out first of all, get all the junk smell out of it, right? Or that's the first thing I did. That's what he did when he took me home to that group, that rehab. He poured in his Holy Spirit, which is a symbol of water, and shook me up, washed me out, you know? Made me respectable enough to come before the group. And then the next thing I do is I cut the top of the can off. That's the first process. Now, when I first was accepted in the group, you know, and was saved, the first thing that happened is like God cut my head off, basically. Because my narrow-minded thinking, he got eliminated it. And you know, I tossed away the top, I never used it again. And that's the whole idea with God. He tossed away my old way of thinking, never to use it again. You know, he doesn't want me to use it again. Now then, see, now I can get inside and really clean it out. See, now, and that's what he did. When he cut off my old way of thinking, then he really got in there, and with those people's love, and they just poured it on me. They just hugged me, and you know, I was hugged and loved and hugged and loved. You know, I loved every minute of it. You know, I couldn't get enough of it. And it was like I was cleaned out, and I didn't have no garbage out of me. You know, now God could use that. You know, it's an empty vessel. You could use it for drinking or something. You know, you could use it for something. But he had bigger plans for me. You know, God said not to hide your light under a bushel. You know, what happens if you hide the light under a bushel? You know, it goes out eventually. I ain't got time for that. Might have hurt my hand. Anyhow, he said not to hide the light under the bushel, but to put it on the candlestick. So, this is a bushel. So, we can't leave it as a bushel. We've got to make it into a candlestick. And if you look, isn't this more like a candlestick?
Amen.
See? So his light can shine. See? Isn't this amazing, huh? And anyhow, the next process is I take the can, I forgot the scissors, but these will work. Okay. The next thing he did to me when I got indoctrinated into, you know, orientated into this rehab, is they took the Word of God and they started working on me with the Word of God. That's what I did every day, all day long, from morning till night, until I went to bed at night. That's all I did. Study the Bible, study the Bible, study the Bible. In the evening, we had worship services, so every night I was praising the Lord, singing the Lord's song. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, we'd go out park and work witness, you know, and I'd give my testimony, of course, as I got better saved and so and speak more about what I knew about the Lord. Anyhow, the next step, like I said, is indoctrination. And in the Bible, the Word of God is compared to a two-edged sword, okay? And a pair of scissors is like a two-edged sword, right? So the next step I use is to cut the can up in little strips, right? Because we don't want this to hide the light anymore. We want to totally prevent it from hiding the light anymore. And this is what happens when that happens. Ta-da! So, can you hide any light in that? No. You know, you see, but now look at here. A new star is born. See how it looks like a star? The light shining off in every direction. But there's still not finished. Now we gotta do the next part, which, you know, another parallel to that is like when God makes a new creature, a new person in the womb, the first thing that forms on the baby is the back. And God made me into a new person. And the first thing he formed in me is a spiritual back. Now the back is the basis for the human being. You know, if your back isn't straight and strong, your whole body suffers. You won't be correctly aligned. Everything will be out of whack, your nervous system, everything. And so God will make sure they built into me a strong back. And that's the first thing I build in the chair, is the back. Now, if you look on the back there, you see that there's hearts up the back spine. See the hearts? And then in the center of the hearts, look at me shake. Boy. Okay, in the center of the heart, you'll see little diamonds. See the little diamonds? And then you see circles. Okay. Now, and everybody knows what a heart is. I don't care if they're from Timbuktu or China or wherever, right? Everybody knows what the heart symbolizes. What does the heart symbolize? Love. Okay, well, what does the diamond symbolize? Eternity, indestructibility. So the very first thing God built into my back was indestructible love. Good? That's when I was born. I was born again. He put into me something that cannot be destroyed. And that's the basis of the rest of me. And if He makes that strong and straight, then the rest of me will be lined up properly also. And you notice that God also said the number of man is 6. And God made man on the 6th day. If you'll notice, there's 6 hearts. 6 hearts. A heart is also the seat of the senses. In other words, that's the part of a person who that senses everything that goes on. Your heart. It's your emotional heart is the center of your emotions. That's the seat of your emotions. And we have 6 senses, which we don't really know about the 6th one too much, because they always tell you about the 5, the senses of the touch, taste, feeling, so on and so forth, eyes and hearing. But the 6th sense we have is our sense of awareness, which we don't really think about as being a sense, but it really is a sense. It's not only a sense of our other senses, but it's a sense of our world and everybody else in it, and our sense of God. That's how we sense. So we do have 6 senses. It's not ESP, although that might be included in it. And so that's probably why he made us number 6 is the number of man. And also there's 6. The 6th is the 6th day is the day that God made man. So isn't that amazing too? And if you notice at the top, at the head of the chair, is the cross. When I was born again, He put the cross, or Jesus, as my head. So you have 6 hearts and 1 cross. And the number of perfection, God's number of perfection, is 7. So man with Christ makes 7. And on the 7th day you rest. So I rest in God. Isn't that amazing? Okay, now, there's also, I won't go into any more details, but I'm going to go ahead and tell the whole story and put it on DVD and you can all see it later. But right now, I'll just go to how this is all like, also these circles here. Circles are also a symbol of time. In other words, a clock goes around in the circle. The hands of the clock go around the circle. The sun, the earth circles around the sun, and so on and so forth. So the cycles or circles or cycles are measures of time. Now that could measure a day, a week, a year, or so on and so forth. It could be used to symbolize any of those things. And there's your 6 days again. 6 circles. God made man on the 6th day. Okay? Okay, now if you look at it, like I said, this is not only the picture of my story, but it's a picture of all of our stories. We're all reclaimed from our sins, and we're all tarnished. You notice there's 3 colors on the chair. There's red, there's black, and there's gold. Now, we're black from our sins, but God covers us with His blood so that the Holy Spirit can rest on us. See? And then the gold, which is a contrast, it represents our faith, which is tried in the fire. So even the colors of the chairs, you know, God had worked out, this might happen to be my favorite color of making these chairs. Even that was intended in my hobby. It's amazing. Okay, how this is like the world. Like I mentioned, I said there's 6 days, right? And God, they made it on the 6th day. But he also, and Peter said that a day is 1,000 years to the Lord, and 1,000 years is still as a day to the Lord, and 1,000, whatever. and we were given, God told Adam to work for 6 days, and on the 7th year rest. Now, the 1,000 years is a day, and a day is 1,000 years. God gave man 6 days for 6,000 years to work. And God told us to go ahead and work, and that's exactly what mankind has done for the last 6,000 years since the Bible's been recorded. He's given us a chance to try every conceivable form of government, whether it's dictatorship, or monarchy, every philosophy, every invention we can come up with, every kind of way other than what He's laid out for us to try to improve on the Garden of Eden. And all we have done is bring the world to the point of destruction, to the brink of destruction. Any minute, we could blow ourselves up. And so that's at the end of 6,000 years, when the Lord will return, God will come down back to the earth, and He will rule and reign over the earth. And that will be the end of time. And the 6,000 years will be over, and Christ is the beginning of eternity. It symbolizes eternity. It's our beginning, the beginning of eternity. And He will end all time, and then after that will reign and rule for the 7th day, which is the millennium. For 1,000 years, then He'll show us the way that life is supposed to be. And He will rule and reign for a year, and we will rest from our labors. Get it? And so this is actually, the story of all of life. So I've really shortened and whacked it because, I could go a lot longer on this. But like I said, I'm going to do it later on a DVD and to refine it. But this is best I can do. You want to talk? No. That's what you're raising your hand. That's the symbol if you want to.
It's great that God gave you that.
Well, I hope that strengthens everybody's faith, because that's what it's all about. That represents a lot of mistakes. To get from there to there, I've made a whole lot of mistakes. And it's the same thing as being a Christian. That symbolizes when I first became a baby Christian. And this symbolizes now. And so between there and then, it's been a long, hard road, believe me. And I've had to. Every day to me is like making a new chair. When I get up in the morning, I have to touch the Lord, and we go this a day, every day. Look for ways to improve on the day before. And that's His work in me, and I'm doing His work.
Wow, thank you very, very much, brother.
Do you want to close us?
Pardon?
You want to close us in prayer?
Lord, again, we thank you for the day. I thank you for the testimony. Lord, we talked about heart surgery when we got to see His heart. Thank you for sharing. Lord, just be with us this week and help us to just be ready to share our story everywhere we go with people. Lord, forgive us where we're failing. God, this week, bring us back together.
got it, he's got it.
I came into a different door, if you will. He's got plenty. Take your bag.
We don't ever want to see ourselves as a result.
That's right.
So the day he was back.
What a mighty God we serve.